PC gaming has always had its share of oddballs, titles that never quite broke into the mainstream, yet built loyal followings that kept their memory alive for decades. They never left PC. They never became household names, but they proved that sometimes the strangest experiments leave the deepest marks. So, let's revisit 10 cult classics that still deserve to be talked about today. When people talk about late 90s and early 2000s action RPGs, Diablo 2 usually dominates the conversation. But lurking just behind it was Nox, a game that could have been a contender if it hadn't been swallowed by Blizzard's juggernaut. Developed by the same team behind Command & Conquer, this was their attempt to mix fast-paced combat, quirky storytelling, and rich RPG mechanics into something that felt both familiar and fresh. And in many ways, it worked. The first thing that set it apart was its tone. While Diablo leaned into gothic horror, Nox had a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. It played things campy and weird, and while not everyone loved that silliness, it gave Nox a charm that Diablo's grim seriousness never had. Gameplay-wise, it was surprisingly fluid. Combat was snappy and reactive, with 3 distinct classes, Warrior, Wizard, and Conjurer, that genuinely felt different from one another. Warriors smashed things up close. Wizards had intricate spellcasting systems that required precision, and Conjurers could summon monsters to do their dirty work. The mechanics weren't just tacked on. They felt like entire playstyles worth mastering. And for the time, the multiplayer was shockingly fun, offering modes like Capture the Flag and free-for-all battles long before ARPGs embraced competitive play, but also had its problems. The camera angle could feel restrictive, especially in crowded fights, and the balance between classes was never perfect. Wizards, in particular, had a steep learning curve that scared off casual players. And while the humor was charming to some, others found it a little too goofy, undermining the dramatic beats of the story. Despite those flaws, Nox was slick, fun, and it had enough personality to stand out. It was a reminder that ARPGs didn't all need to be dark and brooding to be memorable.
Feel air coming from this crypt.
When Nocturne arrived in 1999, it felt like a breath of fresh air for horror fans. Developed by Terminal Reality, it was an action-adventure game that cast you as the Stranger, a supernatural investigator for a secret government organization known as Spook House. The game took you on a globe-trotting journey to fight creatures of the night, including vampires, werewolves, and other ghastly monsters. What really sold the experience was its cinematic presentation and unique atmosphere. The game used a film noir aesthetic with dynamic lighting and camera angles that made every scene feel like a classic B-movie horror flick. The sound design was top-notch, with creaking doors, distant howls, and chilling whispers that heightened the tension. The combat, while a bit clunky at times, was satisfyingly visceral, especially when you managed to pull off a clean headshot on a werewolf. It felt like a playable episode of a dark, supernatural TV series, and its episodic structure, with missions taking you from a haunted mansion in Russia to a dusty town in the American Southwest, kept the story engaging. However, its technical issues and niche genre appeal prevented it from becoming a huge hit. The game was notoriously buggy at launch, and its fixed camera angles, a staple of the era, could be frustrating to navigate. The market for third-person horror was also dominated by big console titles like Resident Evil, making it a tough sell on PC. Today, it's remembered as a moody, stylish cult classic that delivered a cinematic horror experience all on its own, influencing later titles like the Max Payne series with its shadowy atmospheric style. Released in 2011, I Divine Cybermancy is a game that defies easy description. It's a first-person RPG shooter that's part Deus Ex, part sci-fi fever dream, and all-around bizarre. The game throws you into a cyberpunk world as a member of a secret society called the Secreta. The story is a convoluted mess of conspiracies, warring factions, and philosophical ramblings, but that's part of its charm. It's a game that asks you to piece together its fragmented narrative yourself, making every discovery feel earned. What makes it a cult classic is its sheer ambition and depth. The RPG systems are incredibly robust, allowing you to customize your character with cybernetic enhancements, new abilities, and an arsenal of unique weapons. The combat is fast-paced and brutal, with a focus on tactical planning and using your special abilities to gain an edge. The game world is filled with hidden secrets, side quests, and branching dialogue choices, giving players an incredible amount of freedom to explore and experiment. It was a true passion project, and that dedication shines through in every detail. Despite its unique appeal, it was never destined for mainstream success. The game was built on an older engine, which made its graphics feel dated even at launch. The translation from French to English was famously rough, filled with grammatical errors and strange phrasing that made the already complex story even more impenetrable. This lack of polish, combined with a brutal learning curve, made it a hard sell for casual players. But for those who were willing to dig in, this game became a true hidden gem, a game so weird and ambitious that it could only exist on the PC. If you're looking for a horror game that's more psychological than jump scare based, Pathologic Classic HD is a must-play. Originally released in 2005, it received an updated HD version in 2015, which made its bizarre and unsettling world a bit more accessible. The game puts you in a small town ravaged by a mysterious plague, and you can play as one of three characters: a surgeon, an inquisitor, or a folk healer. Each character has a different perspective and a different set of goals, but they all share the same terrifying struggle: to survive for 12 days while the town slowly falls apart around them. It's not a traditional horror game. It's an atmospheric survival RPG with a constant sense of dread and helplessness. The real enemy is not a monster, but time itself. The plague spreads, people get sick, and resources become scarce. The game constantly pushes you to make tough, morally ambiguous choices. Do you steal medicine from the infected to save a loved one? Do you betray a friend to get ahead? The story is deliberately obtuse and filled with strange dialogue, metaphorical characters, and a sense of surrealism that makes the entire experience feel like a bad dream. Its flaws are what kept it from ever gaining mainstream traction. The original game was famously buggy, poorly translated, and incredibly difficult. The HD version fixed many of these issues, but the game's core design, its slow pace, frustrating mechanics, and lack of a clear objective, remains a barrier for many players. But for those who are willing to push through, Pathologic is a deeply rewarding experience. It's a game about loss, morality, and the human condition, all wrapped up in a chilling horror package. 2002's No One Lives Forever 2 is a game that perfectly blends spy action FPS and pitch-perfect parody. The first game was a critical darling, and this sequel refined the formula to near perfection. You play as Cade Archer, a stylish secret agent in the 60s, tasked with uncovering a global conspiracy. But the game's actual genius lies in its tone. It's a loving and hilarious mashup of classic spy films like James Bond, complete with over-the-top villains, gadgets, and a flair for the dramatic. What set it apart was its brilliant level design. Each mission felt like a mini-adventure, from sneaking through a snowy Japanese village to infiltrating a massive secret base hidden inside a volcano. The game gave you multiple ways to approach objectives, whether you wanted to go in guns blazing or rely on stealth and gadgets. The AI was surprisingly smart for its time, and the arsenal of quirky weapons and tools like a lipstick grenade and a robotic poodle. This kept the gameplay fresh and unpredictable. Despite its critical acclaim, the game never became a household name. It was released during a crowded year for first-person shooters, and its quirky, comedic tone might have been a bit too niche for a market dominated by more serious military shooters. As a result, the series never got a proper third installment, and the rights to the franchise became tangled in legal disputes, making it nearly impossible to re-release. It's a tragedy for a game that proved that a spy thriller could be as funny and stylish as it was action-packed. Released in 2006, The Ship is a game that had a truly brilliant premise. It's a multiplayer murder mystery that puts you on a 1920s cruise ship with a simple goal. You have a target you must kill, and at the same time, you're being hunted by another player. The game's genius lies in its social stealth mechanics. To succeed, you have to blend in with the other passengers, avoid suspicion, and find the perfect opportunity to strike. The game is a masterclass in tension and paranoia. The core gameplay loop is incredibly unique. You can't just go around killing people, as doing so will alert the guards and get you sent to jail. Instead, you have to fulfill needs like hunger, sleep, and social interaction, which forces you to act like a normal passenger. This creates hilarious and tense situations, as you might have to eat a meal with your target while trying to find a secluded spot to get rid of them. The game also features a variety of unique weapons, from a classic dagger to a poison-filled umbrella, and a wide array of passengers and environments that make every match feel different. The ship never became a huge hit, partly because its multiplayer-focused design was a bit ahead of its time. The game had a small but dedicated community, but without a massive player base, it was hard for new players to find match. It was a shame because the ship had a truly innovative design that was ripe for a bigger audience. Years later, its influence can be seen in games like Among Us and others that have a similar social deduction mechanic, proving that the ship was a pioneer in its genre. Legend of Grimrock 2, released in 2014, is a loving tribute to a bygone era of PC gaming. It's a first-person dungeon crawler that feels like a modern update to classic games like Dungeon Master and Eye of the Beholder. The game puts you in control of a party of 4 adventurers who get shipwrecked on a mysterious island. The goal is to explore, solve puzzles, and fight your way through a series of challenging dungeons and outdoor environments. What makes this game so special is its incredible attention to detail and its focus on pure, unadulterated puzzle solving and exploration. The game doesn't hold your hand. It forces you to think for yourself. The puzzles are clever and challenging, and the combat, which is done in real time, is fast-paced and tactical. The game also features a massive, interconnected world with tons of secrets to discover. It's a game that respects the player's intelligence and rewards them for paying attention. While it was a critical success, it never reached a massive audience. The dungeon crawler genre is a niche one, and many players were put off by its old-school design and its lack of modern conveniences. But for fans of classic RPGs, it was a dream come true. Legend of Grimrock 2 is a beautiful example of how a game can successfully update a classic genre for a modern audience without sacrificing its core identity. Released in 1998 and 2000 respectively, Thief 1 and 2 are not just cult classics. They're foundational games that help define the stealth genre as we know it today. The games put you in the shoes of Garrett, a master thief in a dark, steampunk fantasy world. Your goal is not to kill, but to sneak, to hide in the shadows, and to steal valuable artifacts without being detected. The genius of the series lies in its atmosphere and its unique focus on sound. In Thief, shadows are your best friend. The game features an iconic light gem that tells you how visible you are, and you have to constantly manage it by staying in the darkness. The sound design is legendary. Every footstep on a stone floor, every guard's cough, and every creaking door tells you something about the world. You're not just avoiding being seen, you're managing the sound you make. The level design is a masterpiece, with complex, multi-layered environments that offer a wide array of paths and opportunities for creative thievery. Despite their critical acclaim and influence, the Thief games were never blockbuster commercial hits. Their slow, methodical pace was a stark contrast to the fast-paced action of shooters like Doom and Quake, which dominated the market at the time. The games were also exclusive to PC, which limited their audience. But their legacy is undeniable. The Thief series laid the groundwork for countless stealth games that followed, from Splinter Cell to Dishonored, proving that a game focused on avoiding conflict could be just as thrilling as one focused on fighting. Kenshi is a game unlike any other. Released in 2018 after years in early access, it's a single-player RPG that's less about being a hero and more about surviving in a brutal, unforgiving world. The game drops you into a massive sandbox without a story, a quest log, or even a main character. You start as a single, weak individual with no skills and no purpose, and from there, you have to find your own way. The world of Kenshi is a desolate, post-apocalyptic wasteland filled with warring factions, strange creatures, and a constant threat of starvation and death. Its genius lies in its brutal sandbox design. You can be anything you want, a trader, a thief, a warrior, a farmer, where you can build your own fortress and start a new settlement. The game is known for its sheer difficulty. Your first few hours will likely be spent getting beaten up by bandits, losing limbs in a fight, or simply starving to death. But every setback is a learning experience, and the sense of accomplishment you get from finally building a small settlement or successfully ambushing a group of raiders is unmatched. The game has a deep, simulation-style feel, where every action has consequences and the world continues to move forward whether you're there or not. It never became a blockbuster hit, and for good reason. Its graphics are basic, and its user interface is clunky. The combat system can be confusing at first, and the game's lack of a traditional narrative or guidance can be off-putting for many players. However, this same uncompromising design is what has earned it a devoted following. For players who crave true freedom and a challenge, this game is a masterpiece of emergent storytelling.
How do you like your steak?
Sacrifice is the kind of game that makes you wonder how it ever got made. It was an RTS, yes, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of commanding from a bird's eye view, you were dropped onto the battlefield yourself, as a powerful wizard with a grim sense of humor and a legion of summoned creatures at your command. You weren't just pointing and clicking, you were in the thick of it, dodging attacks, casting spells, and frantically trying to control the chaos around you. What made this stand out wasn't just its genre-bending design, but its sheer creativity. Each of the 5 gods you could pledge allegiance to had wildly different units, aesthetics, and philosophies. One offered grotesque, fleshy monsters. Another leaned on angelic warriors. Choosing who to follow didn't just change your powers. It changed the entire course of the campaign. Few games gave players that level of freedom in narrative and mechanics back then. It was weird, its visuals were alien and grotesque, its humor dark and sometimes unsettling, and its gameplay overwhelming for players used to more traditional RTS fare. That strangeness is partly why it struggled commercially, but it's also what made it unforgettable for those who clicked with it. The voice acting alone gave the game an offbeat, theatrical energy that made every mission feel like a twisted stage play. Sure, the controls were clunky, the learning curve steep, and the UI a mess by modern standards. But the ambition behind Sacrifice is still jaw-dropping. It wasn't content to just be another RTS. It wanted to reinvent the idea of what strategy could be, mixing action and tactics in a way no one has fully replicated since. That boldness, that willingness to be unapologetically strange, is exactly why Sacrifice remains one of the PC's great cult classics.
Да вразумит твой гнев.